In the first few months of the year 2020, White Horse Theatre is going to be once again visiting France with a total of 8 different plays. So I'll go through them one at a time so you've got a little idea of what is our repertoire for 2020. First of all, we're doing a production of one of Shakespeare's masterpieces, The Merchant of Venice. It's a frightening play. It's a terribly topical play. If you read your newspapers, you'll know what's going on in the Labour Party in England with people being accused of anti-Semitism. This is a play about anti-Semitism. It's about a Jew who has all his life suffered from anti-Semitism. People have spat on him and been incredibly unpleasant to him. And finally, he gets the possibility of revenge against all of Christians. And what then happens, you'll discover if you see the play, but it's a very exciting, a very gripping play. It's also a comical play in some scenes. It has some of Shakespeare's most serious scenes, but it has some very entertaining comical scenes about the young girl Portia, who has to choose which of 3 men she's going to have to marry. So that is The Merchant of Venice. For the middle age group, the 14 to 16-year-olds, we've got a play called The Tyrant's Kiss. And this is actually a modernised version of a Shakespeare play. The Shakespeare play is called Pericles, and it's about a young man who is trying to cross the Mediterranean Sea in order to escape from people who are chasing him, and he keeps on being shipwrecked, and more goes wrong with him. During the course of the play, he loses just about everything he has. He loses his phone, he loses his clothes, he loses his daughter, he loses his wife, everyone he loses, and still he's determined, he's not going to give up, he's going to carry on until he can get his life together, recreate his family, and find peace at last. The play is slightly reminiscent of King Lear. King Lear is about a person who loses everything. He starts off as a king, and gradually he's just a man. And this is what The Tyrant's Kiss is about. It asks the question, what does it mean to be a man? And then we've got a play for the 12, 13, 14, 11-year-olds. It's called My Cousin Charles. It's a light-hearted English comedy. It's actually based on stories that my mother used to tell me. My mother had a cousin called Charles, and she hated him. And during the First World War, a lot of children were evacuated from London because people thought that London might become a battleground with bombs falling. It didn't, in fact, in the First World War, but people were afraid of this. But at any rate, during the First World War, my mother and her cousin Charles had to live together in one household. And they hated each other. And so this is a play about 2 children who hate each other. Whether they go on hating each other throughout the play, I'm not going to tell you. But lots of entertaining and silly things happen during My Cousin Charles, and I can't help thinking of my mother whenever I see it. So those are the 3 plays that we're doing for something like 6 weeks around areas of France. We've then got a different collection of 3 plays, which we're doing slightly later in the season. And the first of those, the one for the oldest pupils, is another Shakespeare masterpiece. It is Othello. Othello, the story of a successful general, and he has everything going for him. He's got a beautiful wife whom he's just married. He's winning all his battles, but his skin is black. And his second in command, Iago, can't stand the thought of working for someone who is black, and he starts to plot against Othello. And Iago is one of Shakespeare's most dreadful villains. He's a very clever man who manages to destroy Othello by working on his pride and his ambition, and it's a very exciting play. You can't quite believe how horrible people are. Othello is such a nice, honest, wonderful person, but Iago manages to get the better of him. So that is Othello. We've then got, for the 14 to 16-year-olds, a play called Dreaming in English. And this is just a simple love story. It's about a German girl who isn't very good at English, and so her parents send her to spend 6 weeks in England during the holiday season in the summer. And she's sent to Brighton, a lovely seaside resort, but she hates it because she doesn't want to be there. She wants to be out enjoying the sunshine, not cooped up in a classroom learning English. So she escapes from the school and goes and lies on the beach, and she meets a young man called Gavin, and the two of them form a friendship. Gavin promises to take Lena, the girl, to London and show her all around the sights of London, and they gradually become nearer and nearer, and just how near they get, I'm not going to tell you, but it's a sweet love story, I think. And then finally, for this company, we've got a play called Honesty. Now, Honesty is a sort of like a detective story, child detectives. It's about a brother and sister who witness a handbag theft. Someone in a supermarket steals an old lady's handbag and then runs onto a train with it. And so our two heroes, the two children, rush after him, leap onto the train and find themselves in London. They don't know where they are, they don't know where they're going, they're just following this criminal, trying to find him, to catch him, and then to inform the police. And it's a simple sort of story, a bit like Emil and the Detectives, if you know that story. It's just a fun story about children who reckon they can be useful as detectives. And then finally we've got a third theatre company performing in France for younger pupils, for primary schools. We have for the upper end of primary schools, people who've been studying English for 3 or 4 years, we've got The Ice Queen, which is a story of a villainous witch who's able to turn the whole world into ice. And she kidnaps a young boy, and his sister has got to try to rescue her brother, but also to rescue the whole world and to stop the world from turning into ice. It needs a lot of help also from the audience to make this happen, as you'll find out if you see the play. And then the final play for the very youngest age group, for the first and second school years, it's called Spot the Dog, and it's a play about a rather clever dog. The dog can do lots of interesting tricks. It can stand on 2 legs and it can bark to order, but it's also rather a naughty dog, and when it sees the opportunity it slips through a gate that hasn't been properly locked and it goes off into the town looking for adventures. And being in the town can be pretty dangerous for a small sweet dog, but Spot the Dog does its best to find the way through the city, but is pretty pleased when he reaches his mistress or master at the end of the play and finds that he's safe at home at last. So those are the 8 plays we're doing in France in this coming year. I'm really looking forward to seeing France again, and I hope that you will all book these plays and have a lot of fun learning English.